am Hotep, Ankh Uja Seneb. Greetings in life, prosperity, and health. In my hand, I am holding what you call an Ankh. A lot of you out there have probably seen this, but probably thought it was just some sort of weird cross. So let me take a moment to educate you what this represents. You see, my ancient Kemetic ancestors used the Ankh to represent life energy itself. Everything that it was within is life. And so the reason I was holding that is because today I want to share a story with you that's going to shed some light on why I celebrate life the way I do every day that I can. You see, almost 17 years ago to the day, I had an unfortunate circumstance where I started getting very, very weak. I wasn't sure what was going on with myself, but physically, I was having a hard time walking. Was having a difficult time just like buttoning my shirts, putting on my shoes. And at first, I thought, well, it's kind of cold outside still. I was noticing this like in probably the winter before, but maybe it's just kind of like arthritis and bursitis, that sort of thing runs through my family. So, about July, I was working in a school based program as what you call a family intervention specialist. And actually, a couple months before that, because school was almost out. So it had been late May. I was walking down the hallway after returning from my lunch break, and I tripped and fell, landed on my chin, and knocked myself out. And so when I came to, I had a good friend, the late Larry Dunham, and the school nurse, Janelle, helped me to my feet, and they called my then first wife up and said, something's going on with your husband. You need to get this man to your hospital. So she rushes there, takes me to the hospital. They start, doing all the check-in stuff and started taking all this blood work. And I spent the next several days laying in the bed in this agonizing pain, and then just like, am I going to die type thoughts going through my mind constantly because I had no idea what in the hell was going on. So I think within the next week or so, maybe they got me to a doctor, and they did some more tests, and finally they sent me to a neurologist who I'll never forget the look on his face when he walked into his office to brief me on my condition. He walked in, he had this look like I don't even know how to tell this man what I want to tell him. And so I said, "What's going on, man? Are you gonna tell me I'm never gonna walk again?" He said, "That's the least of your worries." I said, "What do you mean?" And he says, "If we don't figure out what this is and find a way to treat it, this is going to take you out probably within the next year." So, being only 35 years old at the time, or I think I was more like 37 or so, I really didn't even know what to think. My initial reaction was being pissed off, of course, like anybody would be. And then I was just so angry, and I just remember it seemed like he was mumbling kind of like Woodstock on Charlie Brown, and at that point I kind of grabbed the little cane that I was trying to walk on and stood up, and I said, "You gonna tell me I'm not gonna walk again? How much do you want to fucking bet?" That was my exact words. Excuse the language, I didn't mean to offend anybody. And so I remember I was so angry. I'm up here struggling to make it down the hallway, and I tripped on the carpet and fell down. And this lady comes running out of the office to pick me up. She said, "Do you need help?" And I just started crying. I didn't know what to do. It actually kind of tears me up to talk about it right now. So she assists me to get out to the car where my ride was waiting to pick me up. And I just spent the next few months in misery because they had no idea what was going on. My health was deteriorating so fast that I knew death was imminent. There was pretty much nothing they could do to stop it at that point. One day they finally scheduled I think it was called a EMG test where they stick these little like probes in you that attaches wire, and it has a machine, and it makes it sound kind of like a Geiger counter would around radiation once it actually finds the inflammation. And the thing started going off like crazy. And the doctor that was administering the test, I'll never forget, he smiled, and I said, "What?" And I said, "Am I going to walk again?" He said, "Well, that part's going to be up to you." He said, "I think that you're going to be able to survive this if we can get you treated here quickly." So with that, I was like, okay, there's a glimmer of hope there somewhere. So by this point, I was actually in a wheelchair, and that would have been about a year, 20, or excuse me, 17 years ago to the date that I actually went into the wheelchair. It was shortly after the 4th of July that year, I remember. And I remember once I got out of bed, I was pretty much in that wheelchair from the time that the kids went to school and my first wife had actually gone to work. And I had, my mom would come by and check on me. All my coworkers from my job with the county would come by and check on me. And I lost so much weight. The biggest concern was, oh, he's starving to death. So people started feeding me. They bring by like Subway sandwiches and big ass apple and peach cobblers and pies and shit. And so by that time, I'd actually got on the drug prednisone, methotrexate, and azathioprine. Now, the side effects of prednisone, for those of you that had to take a relatively high dose, you get like this sudden weight gain and this bloat. You get this moon face. I walked around my face looking like all the time, and it makes your hair grow. So I couldn't reach up actually to cut my hair. So I had this like kind of George Jefferson afro type thing working, and it's just I kind of rolled with it. That was who I was at that time. But there was still a lot of questions going through my mind as, am I going to survive this? Will I ever be able to do this again? Will I ever be do that again? Now I have two children. They were let's see, Elijah is 21 now. Sequoia is 27. So if I go back 17 years ago, they would have been about 10 and 4. And Elijah was at that point where he wanted to always, climb on me, and he couldn't understand why he couldn't climb on me. He actually probably thought the wheelchair was part of me. And I can just always remember him when we'd be watching TV or something. He would say he had this fascination with roller coasters, so he'd always watch like on these videos that he would get from his mom of these roller coasters. And he was like, "Dad, if you can walk again when we go to Knott's Berry Farm, you got to ride that." And so I'm thinking, all right, I want to humor him. I will never walk again. So the hell with that. Yeah, I'll go ahead and get on it. And so that's going to come back and bite me in the ass. And I'm going to tell you about that in a minute here. So anyway, once they got me on the prednisone and the inflammation started going down. So the inflammation, to give you an idea of how inflamed my muscle tissues were, you have what you call CK enzyme levels in your body. The normal range is between like 17 and 200, whatever the units are they use to measure it. Mine were at like 20,000. And so it triggered an autoimmune response. The body couldn't find anything to fight, so it just started attacking and eating my muscles up. And I went from this 187-pound guy that was like 10% lower in body fat, all of a sudden down to 142 pounds of skin and bones. Then they put me on this prednisone, and then I blew all up, and I was like 211, looking more like a rerun from What's Happening. And so I had all this weight, and then when I started getting some strength back, I started going to physical therapy. I remember one funny story that kind of comes to mind during that process was my physical therapist. She was a very tiny lady. She probably stood off 5 feet tall, and I'm guessing she maybe weighed 120 if she was lucky. And so she comes in one day and she says, "You're going to walk today." And I said, "How are we going to do that?" So she has this belt. She said, "I'm going to put this belt around you. We're going to get you up, and I'm going to hold you as you walk, and you're going to hold on to that bar over there on the wall." And so my first thought was, well, what the heck's going to happen if I go down? So I vocalized that to her, and she says, "Well, you know what? If you go down, I'm going down with you." And I'm like, okay. And needless to say, I went down about 3 times, and she went down with me every time. So I started making the progress. As the prednisone dosages started reducing, I was able to start shedding some body weight. And once it got down to the point of my inflammation numbers being down in the lower thousands, like 3,000 or below, they actually started me with some like cable weights and stuff in the gym. And then I was able to, at that point, I finally was able to use a walker to get to my car and go down to the 24-hour fitness. But my body had so much myopathy at that point that I was embarrassed on how I looked. I mean, everybody that was used to seeing me at the gym was used to seeing this guy with all this muscles and fit. And now all of a sudden I come in there and I got skin and bones on my chest, and then I got this big ass belly. So yeah, so I didn't want to be seen in there. So I would go down there 4:30 in the morning, get in the swimming pool, and just walk. And then slowly I started reducing the excess body fat on me, and Then I was introduced to a elderly lady who used to come in that pool almost every morning, and she had these like water resistance weight type things, and she offered for me. She said she had another set at the house, and she brought them in for me. I started using those, and within a few weeks, I just actually started getting some muscle tone. And one of the trainers noticed one day at the gym, and he said, "Hey, man, your muscle's starting to come back, man. I think you're gonna make a full recovery." And so at that point, I was really psyched out. I'm thinking, okay, the old me, I'm gonna get there, man. I'm gonna get there. And so I was feeling up, but then I would go through my periods where my numbers would go back up and I'd automatically just get weak again and kind of regress back. And so I got frustrated and I was in that dark place in life where I thought, you know what, maybe this is it. Maybe, my mission is done here. And so I'll never forget, I was looking out the screen door one day. It was a nice fall day, and there was a young man on a skateboard with headphones on singing some Stevie Wonder. And he just seemed to be as happy as can be. And I'm thinking, why is that guy so happy? I mean, there's nothing too ordinary about that, right? But check it out. This dude was a double amputee. So he didn't have a leg on either side. And he was on that skateboard. And I looked at him. I said, I'm up here complaining about my situation. At least I still have my legs. This gentleman's in far worse condition than I am. And he seems to be loving life. So that kind of started changing my attitude and my outlook on how I needed to conduct myself. And this also eventually led to me making the recovery to the point where I could get back in the workforce for a while. And so after a couple years, I had finally got enough strength where I decided, you know what, I want to try to go back to work. And so when I went back to my old job at Multnomah County, unfortunately, these jobs with the counties and other municipalities of the cities and states are based on public funding. And the money had dried up, so my position was basically cut, and I was jobless. And so I decided at that point I was just going to try anything. I almost was going to move out to Las Vegas. I was going to take a job in the juvenile court system out there, but it was so dang hot when we were looking at houses. I'm like, the hell with this. Came back to Portland. I had an application at 24 Hour Fitness, and they called me up. So I went there and studied to be a personal trainer. And I got 3 certifications from the National Academy of Sports Medicine, as well as the 24 Hour Fitness personal training certification. And so I worked as a trainer there for roughly 4 years, and I really found that I enjoyed working with people and helping them reach their fitness goals. At the time, I was in my late 40s, and so the average trainer there at the gym was probably 24, and so most of the older people were more comfortable working with me than they were those young guys because they figured I could relate better to their needs. I mean, the last thing I want to do is push some creatine on a 90-year-old guy that's just worried about functionality. You know what I'm saying? It's just ridiculous. And so, anyway, we I trained there for about 4 years, and then I was able to finally get a job working back with the first place I ever worked in my life, which was our public transit system. And was able to do that for about 11 years. Then the symptoms started kind of kicking in again, and my body just became fatigued, and it made it very difficult for me to get through a work day, consistently. There's limitations onto what I can do. I mean, some days I can't even carry a basket of laundry. There's other days where I feel fine for a couple hours, and I'll go out and try to do something like cut the front lawn, and then I'll be fatigued. But you know what? Life could be a lot worse. And so doctors have put me on disability. I'm got to go in for another opinion up here at OHSU here at the end of the month. And so it'll be interesting to see what they're going to tell me. I already know they're going to say, we've never seen anything like this. We don't know what to tell you. But I put my power and put the power of the situation in the hands of the universe, because I know our creator, our God, has all the answers. There's nothing out there that we can't handle it. As long as we reach our full potentiality, we are equipped to do a lot of great things. I mean, the power of the mind is crazy. I know a lot of times I have this pain, and instead of taking the pain meds, I'll just use like pain guided meditations and really focus the energy in those areas, and I'm able to alleviate pain, at least temporarily, from those areas. I try to live each day like it's my last day, because you know what? Nobody knows what tomorrow is going to bring. You know, I hope to be here long enough to see grandkids graduate from college, to see my wife retire and enjoy, 20, 30 years of retirement life. But, you know, it is what it is. I'm just staying in the present. So, all you out there that are listening, watching, I just want to pass this word of advice. I got to borrow it from the late, great Jimmy V. Don't ever give up. Never give up. Because you have a higher purpose in life, and it's up to you to figure out how you can use that purpose to be a benefit to your fellow humans.